Okay, so welcome everyone. Today we're going to discuss on how to become a pre-sales champion. So, becoming a pre-sales champion. Let's start firstly on what makes a pre-sales champion. Many people think that it's simply um, just knowing a lot about the product itself or having a product with a very competitive pricing that makes us that pre-sales much easier. But actually, I wanted to start first with a quick story that I made a bit of an idea of, for me, what makes a pre-sales champion. So actually, this summer, I was with my parents, and my little sister had a bike, and it broke down. So actually, my mother told me, okay, go to the store with my sister and buy a new bike for her. So when we go to the store, it was actually a pretty simple idea. No, we had to buy a bike. We had the budget. It supposed, I think it was going to be easy. When we got there, we found a problem. There were so many different bikes. One were of aluminum, one were of the Shimano brakes, the different type of brakes, and the salesman only talked about the different functionalities and about the characteristics of the bikes. What happened? You might guess. We went without a bike. Why was this? Because the process of the sales was completely done incorrectly. I thought that when we arrived to the store, the guy would ask us, why do we need the bike for? What happened with the other bike? What was the things that we most like about our older bike? But none of these questions were asked, and we went without a bike. So this made me think, the deep product knowledge is just a, let's say, a piece of the puzzle of a wholesale, and that salesman didn't understand this. What are the other cornerstones for me that are super important? It's not just about knowing the product really deeply and knowing all of the functionalities, all of the characteristics. It's also about having a consultative sales approach, mastering the sales process, knowing when you can go a bit harder or maybe when you have to direct the client in a different way, and also being a strategic thinker. And basically, this adds up to you must sell yourself, you must sell your methodology, you must be a full pre-sales champion and not just a person that is selling Odoo. This is the key of many partners. Actually, I have managed more than 50 partners in the last 2 years, and the common denominator in all of the best partners were that they were selling their methodology. I always say this to my partners. It's really important that you stand down, you look to the partner that you have on the right, and you decide, what do I have different from him? Why a client should choose me rather than that other partner? And this is the key. You must sell your methodology. You must have really clear how to master the sales process. You must guide the client through the correct steps. It's just like when you go to a tailor. For example, I don't know if any of you have done a tailored suit, but it's really an amazing process. You go to a tailor, and even though you can decide some things, like for example, what's the color of the suit gonna be, or what type of suit, what type of fit do I want, it's the tailor that actually guides you through the process because you believe in him. You know it's a really experienced person, and that makes you have a really premium service. So let's talk a bit more in depth of taking a consultative approach to the sale. It's really important that we think, and before going into a sale, we understand that we have to listen more than talk. We need to understand the client's need. We need to be able to take a step back from Odoo and really map their processes, understand their workflow, understand the full size and the full flows of their company, not just their pain points. Many clients just come with, for example, a pain point of they need a CRM or they need a software for invoicing. And it's true that these are like the main points that we have to address, or the first point, but we also have to understand that we have to listen to the client. The clients buy solutions to their problems, and we have to provide those solutions. So once you understand this, it's really important that when you arrive to the sales process, you have to have very clear what the steps are and how to optimize the sales process. In Odoo, I believe that we are really good at selling because, well, we're doing good enough lately. And I mean, I think you guys can understand this simple workflow, right? It's really simple, really straightforward: qualification, demo, follow-up. In direct sales, I started in my role in Odoo as a direct sale a couple of years ago. They made very clear that we had to have really control of the situation during the sales process. The client needs to understand that when we go to a qualification, we have to focus only on their company, not on Odoo. Then we must move to the demo, And then, if it's necessary, go on a second or third demo. But we cannot go on an endless amount of demos. We really have to understand why the client is not moving forward to the next process, or why they don't want to, let's say, go directly with the implementation. When we arrive after these stages of qualification, demo, and follow-up, we usually have two routes. The first one being standard projects. So standard projects are usually simpler projects. They usually are projects that we can do without much customization. And in direct sales, it was pretty clear that after a demo and a second demo or a follow-up meeting, we have to go directly to the proposal. It's super important that we do not lose time, that the client understands that we are in control of the process because we are an expert and because we want the best for them. After the proposal, we must go directly with the start of an implementation with an MVP. It doesn't make sense, as I said before, to go with endless demos. The client obviously have to take a bit of a leap of faith in order to go with another implementation, because it's super important. I mean, the client is never going to be 100% sure that the product is going to work for them, because the only way of doing that is doing the full implementation before paying. And obviously, we are not going to do that. So it's really important that after the proposal, if everything is clear and the client understands that our product is going to work for them, that we go directly with the implementation of the MVP. Obviously, we also have custom projects. And for partners, this is usually the most common type of projects. So after the follow-up demo or follow-up meeting, with the custom projects, we have to go with an ROI analysis. But we also have to understand if it's necessary or not. We many times think that the project needs lots of customization, but actually we can go through a standard route and it's much easier and much faster. But obviously there are, as I said before, some projects that do need this type of personalization. So an ROI analysis is a really, really powerful tool that's going to help us unlock many different sales. I will dive a bit deeper into the ROI analysis in a couple of minutes, but just to finish off the mastering of the sales process, it's true that after the ROI analysis, sometimes we need a proof of concept of workshop, but we don't have to forget this mindset of being agile, being in control of the sales process, and going directly to proposal and to the start of the implementation with an MVP. So, one of the last or the last cornerstone in this example for becoming a pre-sales champion is being a strategic thinker. I know that this might sound a bit like, let's say, a cliche or very sensationalistic, but being a strategic thinker is super important. Being a strategic thinker is thinking on the long term, understanding the market where the client works, understanding why, or let's say, what journey has he had, or why has he decided to go for another implementation. It's super important that we focus on the long term, basically because it's the only way to have a long-term collaboration. Many partners have this problem that they are perceived as an, let's say, IT expert, or the client just wants them to download a software from the internet and go directly with the implementation of that. But it's not only that. You must not be seen as an IT guy. You must be seen as a technological partner, as a consultant. It's really important that we change the perception that the clients have of us with this, because if not, we're not going to be able to show this long-term collaboration. We're not going to be able to sell multi-year contracts. Mastering the ROI analysis, as I said before, is super important. It's a really, really good tool that we have in Odoo, and basically it allows us to get a precise plan and budget. Also, the ROI analysis basically is the return on investment, so we also decide if we actually want to go with this project or not, and it really is a tool that can unlock many times the sale. So as a pre-sales champion, we have to have all of the tools in our belt, and we have to understand that the ROI analysis tool is super important. So what can we do with the ROI analysis? As I said before, in the qualification, it's super important to just focus on how the client is working today. What are their needs? What are their pain points? As you see here, we have this, let's say, mapping of the processes that a normal client might have. And as I said before, maybe they just came to me because they needed a CRM or because they were lacking, let's say, invoicing software. But really, when we sit down with them, we do an in-depth analysis and we understand the full scope of the company, we are able to have a much larger impact. This links a lot with what I just said about being a strategic thinker. We have to go for long-term collaborations. It's the best way to grow, and it's the best way that we can maximize the client satisfaction. So once we have this mapping of the processes, what do we have to do? Now is when Odoo steps in. This way, we can, with the same way that the client is working, make it much more efficient through Odoo. That's the way that we have to think about it. We have to make the client understand that we are the experts, that we are the pre-sales champion in this case, and that we are really in control of the situation and we are going to help their company be much more efficient. Also, with the ROI, we get what will the project cost. This is super important, and with Odoo, we are really lucky that our prices are really transparent. In terms of licenses and hosting, it's pretty clear. In terms of implementation with the pack, it's also very clear. But for partners, many times, this is a complication. And the ROI analysis tool really, really helps them with these two problems of implementation and maintenance. Especially the smaller partners, they always come to me at the beginning and they say, how am I going to give a budget to a client if I don't know how much time it's going to take for me? Okay, it's true that sometimes we have to take an estimation, it's the same that we do in Odoo, but the ROI analysis tool really helps us go a bit deeper into this type of costs. For the implementation, it's super complicated. It depends on the scope of the project. But if we go, as I said before, just with a big, big qualification, we understand the needs and we are able to map them into Odoo apps, we're going to have a much better idea of what the project is going to cost. So what do I get back? Basically, what we get is an in-depth analysis that is going to help us a lot, not only during the pre-sales, but also obviously during the implementation. As we see here, for example, we have a column of savings, and this column, for example, let's say this client was super interesting or his main pain point was manufacturing. However, doing the ROI analysis, we realized that maybe it's a big pain point for him, but we don't see that much savings in terms of time efficiency that, for example, we can see in inventory or in purchase. So this is really going to help us make the client understand that we are the experts, that we are going to make them grow and have a much better approach to the project. And also, during the implementation for the project manager, it's going to be much easier to understand where the priorities lay at. Also, what does the ROI analysis helps us with? A high-level planning. This is a really, really, really important thing during the pre-sales because many clients, before they decide to go with an implementation, they have lots of doubts, right? They don't know if they're going to get it on time. They don't know if the project is going to take 8 months, 1 year before it starts running. But with Odoo, we are really lucky with this as well because Odoo is one of the few softwares that we can work super efficiently by phases. I've seen companies that in 1, 2, or 3 months, they are already working full implementation in one specific department, and then in a second phase, maybe in a couple more weeks, they have another department fully working with that. But that makes it much more efficient, obviously, because we are already using the tool at a very early stage. As I said before, this is key, and it will help you a lot during the pre-sales, because if you are able to give the client a specific timelines, you're able to give the client a specific cost, they're going to realize that you really know what you're talking about, and it's going to give you much more credibility. In this case, credibility and confidence is basically one of the key factors, right, with the sale. It's the same as I said before. We really need to go for that long-term approach, and we only will do that by gaining confidence. And the best thing about the ROI is that Odoo is there to help you. So, for example, I've seen many partners also that they are really scared during the pre-sales because they say, okay, I want to do an ROI, but I don't know how to do it. So there are two great things about this, that firstly, Odoo will help you, and second, that the ROI template that we have is completely free and completely available to everyone in our website. So, in terms of collaborating with Odoo, we have two options. The first option, maybe for a first ROI, if you've never done it, we have consultants that are trained to help you do an ROI. They will teach you how we do it in Odoo, and the partner and Odoo will work hand in hand. The consultant will be and will attend to the meetings, and they will really help you in order to perform a good ROI. The option two is simply a peer review. For some partners that maybe are more experienced or they have their own way of doing it, it's important that you also count with our help in order to do a peer review and assess if what you're doing is correct and if it's going to have impact when we present it to the client. So, just as a conclusion, I would want to say, as I said before, that the four main cornerstones are having a deep product knowledge, but it's not only the, let's say, the most important one. It's also super important to have a consultative sales approach, know how to map the processes, know how to present the solutions to the client problem, and go for that strategic thinking, that long-term approach. Also, as I said before, the sales process, we have to be agile. We don't have to go for endless demos. We don't have to go for endless problems because obviously the client has to take a small leap of faith in order to start the implementation and do it successfully. So I will open now the floor to any questions, and you have here the QR. I will be really happy to answer any of them. Thank you.
For your talk. The first question is, once the customer is convinced in Odoo product, what's the best way to close and get the quote signed?
Sorry, can you repeat a bit higher?
Yeah. Once the customer is convinced in
Yeah.
Odoo product, what's the best way to close and get the quote signed?
Okay, so as I said before, being agile is super important. I don't know if you saw Fabian's keynote the other day, but one of the most important things that they work with my partners is the proposal. It's super important to have a really professional proposal because it's exactly showing the client how we work. We are showing our methodology. So if we have a very good proposal, the client will probably understand that they are in good hands because we are being professional during the whole sales process. And obviously, when we actually go to the sale, it's super important, as I said before, to maintain the reins and to always put a next meeting when we have finished our current meeting. That way, we can put a closing meeting and really sit down to see if there are any things to close and finalize the sale so that we can start working.
Okay. Is it better to have a foot in the door sales strategy, try and start small and fast, or make a full ROI analysis?
I mean, it really depends on the company. As I said before, we have to understand if it's a standard project or a more complex project. But really, there are partners that, when they define the methodology, they decide that they are only going to work with ROIs. That way, it helps them because when they go into the implementation, they actually get already all of the information that they need because they did a really in-depth qualification. However, as I said before, we don't have to waste time that is not needed. If you see that there is an implementation that is quite easy to do, it's important to not go on an endless ROI or maybe do a really, really small ROI that gives us the information and we can start working with the MVP quite quickly.
And how much can you usually bill for an MVP or for POC?
How much can you, sorry?
Can you bill? Can you usually bill for an MVP or for POC?
I don't understand the question. I don't know if someone can elaborate a bit more on that. What do you mean by how much can you build? Build, sorry, I understood build. Okay, so for the MVP, it's basically starting the implementation already. So it has to be defined during the proposal what the whole project is going to cost. For an ROI, I have different examples. I have partners, for example, that they go for very simple ROIs, and it's the only way of working. So maybe it's around 700 euros, 1,000 euros, that in terms of the Spanish market. And they maybe stay, or they actually do an ROI of like, let's say, 6-7 hours. And it's a really simple ROI. And they even do that before doing the full implementation or doing the full proposal. Sometimes client can just buy this, let's say, 1,000 euro pack, and then they decide if they want to go with the ROI or not. It's really important that we understand that the ROI is an estimation, and we have to present it to the client that way. They have to, let's say, we have to build the trust with them by showing that what we are doing or the potential savings that in time that we are doing are completely an estimation, and they can actually tweak that estimation. They can actually say, okay, instead of 10% of time that I am saving, it's only 5%, and how is that making a difference? But basically in billing, it's really your decision. I see partners that maybe do really complex ROIs and it depends on the hours, and what they do is that depending on the hours that they have billed, they subtract that when the project is finally signed.
Next question is, what is the best way to deal with customers who take too long to decide?
Okay, that is an important question, and as I said before, it's kind of the same methodology as I was saying with the tailor, right? When you go to a tailor and you're doing a custom suit, you know the steps and you know what steps needs to be followed, and you're listening to the expert because you know that they are doing it lots of times. So when clients take too much time, I always recommend being super, super clear with them. As I said before, we can put a meeting and simply ask them okay, what is missing? You have the proposal, you have everything clear. What is missing so that we can move on? If they are not aligned internally, if they are not prepared for the implementation, we don't have to waste our times. It's really important as well that we know which clients we have to choose because obviously we have limited resources. And if we are spending too much time with someone that is not going to convert, it's important that we divert these resources elsewhere.
The next question is, how are the stages defined in your CRM?
Okay, so basically my CRM, and this is common for all the Odoo employees, we have territory, which is basically all of the new leads that we are getting. Obviously, I'm talking about opportunities, right? We have a previous stage of potential leads. Territory, qualified sponsor, when already you have spoken with the client, you have understood their needs, then we go to the demo, which would fall into the stage of qualified sponsor. And then it's really important that after the demo, we move it directly to the proposal and we send the proposal to the client. Why is this important? Because many times we are wasting lots of time with a client that when we actually send him the proposal and we speak about pricing, they don't want to go with the implementation because they believe it's too expensive. So it's super important that we are clear with this and that after a demo, we directly send the proposal. And we have to have that direct sales mentality that I was talking about. Once we send the proposal, the client needs to sign. Like, what are we waiting for? If we already have moved past the demo, past the follow-up stage, what are we waiting for? Everything should be clear already, and we should go for the implementation.
Okay, last thing is, can you recap the most important steps to becoming a pre-sales champ in 3 words or less per step? What should we do?
Okay, so as I said before, obviously it's super important to be knowledgeable of the product. You have to have a deep product knowledge, but it's not the only thing. You have to have that consultative sales approach that I was talking about. You have to have that strategic thinking, and obviously that mastering of the sales process. Basically, in order to sum it up, as I said before, you must sell yourself and not Odoo. You must understand what makes you different from another partner and how I am going to be able to direct the client through the sales process effectively until they sign. Because this really is not, let's say, just a sale. We want to have a long-term collaboration with them. And I think that's a really powerful message because if you're aligning your success with the client success, they understand that we are doing something for the greater good, let's say, for the good of both. So it's super important that we see that long-term vision and that the client understand that we are going to do what's best for them because we are the expert.
Well, thank you. Do you want
No more
to? Okay.
questions?
I think we got them all.
Okay, well,
Thanks a
thank
lot.
you everyone.